Hi, this is Jonathan Marks, and I'm here with Stephen Faraone, PhD. He's Distinguished Professor of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences, as well as Professor of Neuroscience and Physiology at SUNY Upstate Medical University in Syracuse, New York. He's going to be speaking at the upcoming annual meeting of APSARD, the American Professional Society of ADHD and Related Disorders, this coming January 12th to 14th at the Washington, D.C. Marriott Hotel. He is chairing a symposium titled ADHD is a Brain Disorder. Why is this so difficult to establish? Dr. Faraone, can you give us an overview of what you and your panel will be presenting?
Yes, happy to do it. This symposium follows up on the publication this year of a paper from a very large consortium of researchers who combined data of several thousand ADHD patients and control individuals who were studying the neuroimaging correlates of ADHD. And what the study reported was that in children, they found significant differences in volumes of some subcortical structures in the brain between those with ADHD who had smaller structures and those without ADHD who had larger brain structures. And this confirmed many prior reports, individual reports, that this was the case. But it was because it was a very large study, several thousand research participants, it was really an important finding for the field. However, in that same study, when they compared the brains of the adults with ADHD and the adults who didn't have ADHD, they didn't find any statistically significant differences. And this has raised questions in the field as to why has this been difficult to establish? Why, number one, are there not differences between the adults with and without ADHD? And even in the child samples, there were differences, but the differences weren't very big differences. They were small differences. Mm-hmm. And so at the upcoming APSARD meeting, we put together a panel of experts in ADHD and neuroimaging, people like Barbara Franke from the Netherlands, Jeff Newcorn, Joe Biederman, Jay Geed, to discuss this issue, to put together kind of an expert consensus on what do we know about the brain and ADHD, how can we make sense of these findings in the context of other neuroimaging work in ADHD. This, for example, is only a small slice. Even though the sample is very big, there are many other different kinds of neuroimaging studies. There are functional studies of the brain. There are studies of cortical thickness. There are studies that look at connectivity in the brain. So this group of investigators trying to essentially put together a panel to present data, but more importantly, to provide a lot of room for discussion as to what do these results mean and what are the implications for the field. We felt it was pretty important because the paper that generated this idea had been really attacked actually in the scientific literature by some people affiliated with the anti-psychiatry movement in this country who were claiming that, these results say that ADHD is not really a brain disorder. We disagree with that. And in part, we want to discuss why those criticisms are wrong and how it's better to understand these data in a much bigger context, both by ADHD neuroimaging, but also of other types of ADHD research. So I think it's going to be a really interesting symposium because you're going to get views from a wide range of experts on this issue, and it's really never been done before. So I'm looking forward to it very much.
And what has been the difficulty in establishing ADHD as a brain disorder? What's the problem?
Well, there's a few problems. There is, from a point of view of the public, sometimes the public has a hard time understanding how a disorder like ADHD could be considered a brain disorder. They tend to think of brain disorders like Alzheimer's disease, where someone has this very severe dementia. Compared to that, ADHD seems rather mild. How could that be a brain disorder? That's one issue. The other issue, which is more technical, has to do with the fact that disorders in general in psychiatry, not just ADHD, so this is not unusual to ADHD, but in psychiatry, the disorders have very complex etiology. It's not so simple that there's a big hole in the brain that we can see, and everybody has a hole there, and therefore they have ADHD. That would be simple if we could do that. It's not like when someone has a stroke. They have a stroke, there's a mark on the brain scan. You say, look, there's an area of the brain that died because this person had a stroke. Mm-hmm. Everybody who has a stroke in that same spot in the brain has the same problem. With ADHD, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different etiological factors, these causal factors. Because of that, the traces they leave behind in the brain aren't used. They're small traces. So that's one issue. The traces tend to be small. It doesn't mean they're not important. It just means that they're small and they're not as big as they might be for, say, a neurological disorder. The other problem we face is that we believe can be different kinds of ADHD. So if one person has a kind of ADHD caused by a certain problem and other people have different kind of ADHD, and we put them all together in the same study, those results will average out. And so the results will seem smaller than they actually might be if we could do a better job defining the specific subgroups. So those two particular problems make it harder to establish brain differences than it is for, say, neurological disorders, for example.
Great. So this really promises to be an exciting symposium. You haven't done this kind of presentation before, I understand.
We really haven't done this before. This is kind of novel. We're taking an issue that's somewhat controversial, and we're having people present data, but also providing more time to discuss it and to take questions from the audience about it as well.
Great. So we've been talking with Dr. Stephen Faraone. He's presenting a symposium at the American Professional Society of ADHD and Related Disorders annual meeting. That's happening this coming January 12th to 14th at the Washington, D.C. Marriott Hotel. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Faraone.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.